All right, first blue card. So okay, now we'll be looking at the blue cards in Aether Revolt. So the first one we have is Aether Swooper, one generic and a blue for a Vidalcan Artificer, 1/2. It flies. It's a Stormcrow, and when it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy, and when it attacks, you may pay 2, and you create a 1/1 servo artifact creature token.
Yeah, Stormcrow's stat line is weak. 1 power just doesn't do enough, but if you have a good way to generate energy, this card is alright. You can be swinging on the air unimpeded and just make a bunch of 1/1s on the ground. So,
Yeah, but then you're also picking at them for 1, which isn't amazing. I'm not a big
yeah,
fan.
it's okay.
It's,
The 1 power is weak though.
yeah, I really just like that stat line.
I wish it was a 2/1 instead.
2/1 would be a lot better for sure.
That'd be ridiculous, yeah.
Oh man, this is a bomb.com. The next card, Aether Type.
Next card.
Four,
Aether type
yeah.
whale of 6 CMC, 4 generic, and then blue, so 6 CMC for a creature whale, 6/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you get 6 energy, and then you can pay 4 energy, return it to your hand. Whew. So this is a 6/4 flyer that your opponent's going to have a very difficult time dealing with, because if they ever try to remove it, you can just bounce it back.
The fact that it's only 4 energy to activate and you get 6 energy on the ETB is pretty significant. I mean, if you keep bouncing it, you're going to miss out on attacks, but you can stockpile a unbelievable amount of energy with this card. And potentially that can be very powerful. This card is very strong. It'll probably win a lot of limited games. Very close to giving this the Bomb is Bomb award, but you know.
Yeah, 6
so
power
close.
in the air is ridiculous.
Yep, definitely.
Can end games so quick.
Yep, and it's just tricky to remove. Now we have another rare. Another really good one too, in my opinion. Baral, Chief of Compliance, 1 generic and a blue for a legendary creature, Human Wizard. It's 1/3, and instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less. And whenever you play a spell that counters, a spell or ability that counters a spell, you draw a card and then discard a card.
Yeah, I mean, being able to basically loot every time you play a counterspell is really strong in Control, because it lets you filter out the cards you don't need and find the answers you do. So that alone is strong. Plus, making your instants and sorceries cheaper to help deal with some aggressive decks is all right. We'll have to see if he's worth playing in that style of deck, because you do need instants and sorceries to help take advantage of that. And a 1/3 stat line on its own isn't that strong, but he does dodge like removal that'll be big, like shock. He does deal with shock, so I think I like this guy.
I like this card a lot in Constructed as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot of potential here. In control-based decks, getting free draws off of, well, I mean, not enough free draws, I suppose you loot, but getting draws off your counter spells is strong. Getting reduction in your spells, like your summary dismissals. Your what's the 3 mana one that's cancelled but with exile?
Like Void Shatter.
Void Shatters become counter spells with exile. A lot of application with this card. I'm looking forward to playing with this.
Yeah, card's good. I mean, in limited though, you're not going to want to play this guy.
Probably not. Oh, maybe you can.
Unless you get a good amount of counter spells, yeah. Or
you know what? Yeah, in limited, it's not spectacular, but spell cost reduction is always pretty powerful too. So we got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, but he's a 1/3 at the end of the day. We'll see.
Oh, right. I forgot. I believe this is your pick for best artwork.
Yes, this is my pick for
your opinion,
best artwork,
I suppose.
In my opinion, I think this card is gorgeous. Wesley Burt is a great artist, so good job.
Yeah, fantastic artwork. I like it a lot.
Yep.
I was close to picking this one too, but we'll see what mine is later.
All right, next card, Burrows Expertise. So in line with the Expertise cycle, this one is 5 CMC for 3 generic and blue sorcery. Return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to their owner's hands. And then you may play a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its cost.
Get out of my way.
This card is a lot of tempo.
It's a lot of tempo for sure.
Yeah, and I like that sassy flavor text too.
I mean, when I look at the text, 5 mana to return 3 target artifacts or creatures, I'll be honest, I mean, maybe it's because I don't play that much blue often, but it doesn't seem that good, especially because 5 mana is a pretty big cost to get up to. But the fact that you get a free card out of your hand,
I think this deceives a lot of people, because I don't think this is a control card. I think this card is meant for mid-range. some kind of blue deck where you want to turn the tables, and this is the card to do it. You can also abuse ETBs. You can bounce your own creatures and artifacts to your hand if you want to put.
Yep.
I mean, the fact is that this card's sorcery, so you can't do it in response to anything, which sucks. But if you want to abuse ETBs, you can return your own things to your hand. But I think the more practical application is that you can bounce your opponent's board, and then you can go in and get a lot of damage done that turn. Keep adding to the pressure by playing a 4 CMC card. Plus, if you have, like Baral on the battlefield, this card's a 4 mana card.
True,
so you're essentially getting this effect for free if you have another 4 mana card in your hand. You can just play this for 4 mana, replace it with a 4 mana card, and basically just did zero mana, return 3 things, artifacts or creatures, to their owner's hands, and that's absurd.
Yeah, you can think of it as like tacking this effect onto another card.
I definitely think this card needs a certain shell for it to be good. I do not think it's a control card. I think it's definitely either an ETB based deck or for a deck that is a more mid-rangey in blue. I would keep an eye on it though. In limited, I don't think this card is as strong.
No, I think in limited this is bananas. I think the entire
you think it's bananas?
I think the entire expertise cycle is fantastic in limited, mainly because you get that free spell. Honestly, limited draft is oftentimes creature based in a lot of ways. For the most part, you're playing mid-range versus mid-range decks usually in draft, and this card basically enables you to get your opponent's board out of the way, and then you play your own card that's 4 or less, which your deck is probably made up of, because 4 mana is really their peak for the most part, and it's just really powerful, and it'll let you.
I guess I can see that. Yeah, I guess you changed my mind, maybe because there are a lot of board stalls in limited, so that this card helps break the board stall.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the thing I don't like about this card in limited is that it doesn't trade with anything. Like, it's a lot of tempo, but it doesn't trade with anything. Like, you're not going up in card advantage. You're just going up in tempo with this.
Yeah. You're going down and you're getting card disadvantage, but the tempo you gain is unreal with this kind of effect.
Yeah, but I suppose Sea God's Revenge was amazing in Pharos Limited, and
oh my god, I made a mistake.
So maybe this is alright.
Whoops. Alright. Whoops daisy. Alright, next card. Bastion Inventor, 5 generic and a blue for a Vidalcan Artificer, 4/4 with Improvise. So Improvise lets you cast your spells for cheaper as long as you tap an artifact. So each artifact you tap pays for 1 generic of the casting cost, and this creature has hexproof.
I think this card is really strong for a common.
Yeah, hexproof can be really annoying to deal with, for sure. And I'm worried about Improvise though. I'm not worried, but like I'm hesitant to how good Improvise is gonna be in draft.
You only really need 1 or 2 artifacts to make this card good. Because if you're playing him as a 5 mana 4/4 for hexproof, that's a great common. And if you're playing him as a 4 mana 4/4 with hexproof, that's a great rate too. And plus, there's a high ceiling for this card. And then at worst, you're playing a 6 mana 4/4 with hexproof, which is not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world either. So I honestly think if you can get at least 1 or 2 artifacts reliably on the battlefield early, this guy's a good 4/4 for 4 or 4/4 for 5 with hexproof. And at the common, he's at common. So I actually like this card.
Yeah, it's just unexciting, I think. And hexproof, I think, in draft is kind of not as important or relevant, considering how there's a lot of removal. There's not that much removal in these sets, for the most part. I mean, yes, if you want to try to remove this, it's gonna be a pain. But 4/4 can trade. I mean, it's not terrible to block it, and it can.
Yeah, I mean, easily. One of the problems is that with his mana cost, are a lot of times where if you don't get the improvise off, he just doesn't trade with similar creatures that are being played. He gets outclassed in just terms of raw stats. That's a problem. But a 4/4 with hexproof is a veritable threat, in my opinion.
Yeah, it can be threatening. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All
right, next card is Disallow. This is the cancel of the set, so it's 3 CMC for 1 generic and 2 blue. You get an instant, it's at rare, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability.
I mean, it's a cancel, yeah, but it also outright is better than Void Slime, which is green, blue, blue.
Yeah, it
So
is. It
it
is.
better.
It's like cancel with a stifle effect attached to it that you can choose. It's also, I don't like the fact it's rare. I feel like this card should be an uncommon, but for whatever reason, Wizards chose to make it a rare. And it's also a story-based card. You can tell by the Planeswalker watermark. I have no idea what part of the story it's telling, but overall, this card is really solid. I think it'll see a good amount of constructed play, and
Well, I'm not sure.
we'll have to see if it can compete with Void Shatter. Yeah, because I think Void Shatter is superior at the moment.
A lot of people are thinking, yeah, I can use this card to counter an Emerald trigger, but like if you're gonna do that, you might as well just play
Summary Dismissal.
Summary Dismissal, which gets rid of the effect and the body for 1 more mana. I mean, what are you choosing? Are you choosing your opponent to have the ability, or are you choosing your opponent to have the 13?
Well, I mean, the fact is that this card is good enough on its own, in the sense that it gives you options. Like countering a target spell is great. You know, being cancel's not the worst thing in the world. Plus, you can choose to target an ability, so it's just added flexibility, which is something a control deck wants. It's just the thing that's so, I guess, like unappealing about this card is that Void Shatter, you get to exile the spell. You know, instead of, and that's actually very relevant with Delirium and with a lot of things that trigger in the graveyard or can trigger in the graveyard. So we'll see. I actually think this is a good counterspell.
Alright, next up we have Dispersal Technician, 4 generic and a blue for Reduct and Artificer, 3/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return a target artifact to its owner's hand. Man, it had to say target artifact, huh? Couldn't have said target creature or artifact.
Yeah, it's specific.
I'm not paying 5 mana for a 3/2, where I'm not gonna be able to get a guaranteed hit all the time. It's kind of
this card's weak.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's get to better places.
All right, next card is Efficient Construction. For 4 CMC, 3 generic, 1 blue, you get an enchantment at uncommon. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature with flying.
It's kind of like Thopter Spy Network in a sense.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Thopter Spy Network. The ceiling isn't as high, but the floor is a lot. The floor is higher though, in the sense that you're guaranteed, like whenever you cast an artifact spell, to get an additional 1/1 Thopter, and that's not the worst thing. It depends entirely on how you build your deck. If you have a lot of artifacts, especially cheap artifacts, this card becomes pretty good. My only problem is that this is 4 CMC, and by that stage in the game, you've likely played a lot of your artifacts, unless you have some big ones still in hand. And I think you would need to make at least 4 1/1 flyers for this card to be worth the investment.
I mean,
I think that's safe to say.
I mean, it's important to realize that if you don't trigger the effect, you just spend 4 mana for do nothing enchantment.
Yeah, right? I think this card could be a trap, but it depends on what your deck is.
I hope it's not a trap. I hope people are smart enough not to realize this card isn't that good.
Yeah, I honestly do not think this card's that great either.
However, check it out, right? Play this card, right? 4 Ornithopters. Boom, boom, boom. Draw 4 cards. Easy. Just for 4
You don't draw. You don't draw.
Oh, sorry. You get one more. You get 4 1/1. Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. So you just use 5 cards and you put 4 power on the board total.
That flies. Hey.
It doesn't seem worth it to me.
Yep, not a good card.
No.
Alright, we have Hinterland Drake, which is our next card. 2 generic and a blue for a Drake. It's a 2/3 flyer, and it can't block artifact creatures. This is fine.
Yeah, this guy's great.
I mean, here's the thing, though. There was a card in Kaladesh that was also a Drake. Or no, it's a whale, sorry. 4/3 flyer, can't block. This one can block other things. It can also block artifact creatures. I wasn't able to play with that card. Unfortunately, it looked really good, but I've heard that it's actually kind of weak. Mainly because blue doesn't really want to be attacking that much. You really want your creatures to be left back blocking. Usually, you're slower than the other decks. The blue decks in Kaladesh. Yeah, this can block creatures at least, smaller creatures. But
My argument for this card, though, is that Scrapskin Drake in Origins was another similar card. It was a common 2/3 flyer, except it had the clause that it could only block creatures with flying, and that card was playable. I think this card is better than that. You know, you don't get to block vehicles, but most vehicles are bigger than your stat line anyways.
Yeah, and you're going to be able to block other creatures on the ground.
You don't get to block servos, which is sad, but the trade-off is you get to block creatures on the ground. I actually think this card is pretty good.
Comparatively,
especially for common.
Yeah, comparatively, it's a lot better than the other ones that say you completely can't block. So yeah, this is pretty fine. 3 mana, 2/3 flyer is a good stat line as well.
It mostly depends on the format.
I just wouldn't pick it too highly. If they're better uncommons or something like that, or some removal maybe.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Hey, removal.
All right. Next card is Ice Over, 2 CMC, 1 in a blue, Chaman Aura, common, enchant artifact or creature, enchanted permanent doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. Yeah, this card's fine.
Once again, I'm going to bring this up every time. Bounce heavy set. Also, another downside to this card is a creature has to be tapped.
That is true. It doesn't tap the creature itself. That is one problem.
So your opponent might be able to get a hit in. The thing is, it's cheap enough that I don't think it's going to matter too much. It's a good card. 2 mana is very, very cheap for the effect.
Yeah, I mean, this card is a lot like Exhaustion. Well, not Exhaustion. Oh man, what was that?
Sleep Paralysis?
Wasn't
Are you talking about Origins?
It might be Sleep Paralysis, the one I'm thinking of. It's another enchantment. Or, no, Claustrophobia. Except Claustrophobia taps, and this one doesn't. Yeah, this is one cheaper for a Claustrophobia that doesn't get to tap. This card, I mean, like, when a creature's tapped, it doesn't get to crew. Like, that's another thing to consider. It blanks on Vigilance, though. That's one problem. And like you mentioned, if there are a lot of bounces in the format, the cards like this become extremely worse. So, I don't know. But I think at a common, it's not the worst thing in the world to pick. It's not the worst. It's decent filler.
Alright, we have Illusionist Stratagem, 3 generic and a blue for an instant. Exile up to 2 artifact creatures you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under the owner's control. Draw a card.
Speaking of bounces.
Yeah, is this exactly like the card from Eldritch Moon?
Oh man, what?
There was a card, I forget his name.
But it didn't draw. I'm pretty sure it didn't draw, and it was like one less.
I think it drew. I can't remember. Well,
you're talking about the card that was like Cloud Step, kind of?
Well, it bounced 2 of your things.
Or Cloud Shift, I mean.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it drew. I can't remember. But
you could be thinking of Aether Trade Winds from Kaladesh.
No, it's not from Kaladesh. It's from Eldritch Moon. I believe the same mana class, same effect for the most part, and I think it also drew as well.
I'm having a hard time remembering.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time remembering too. It's fine. I mean, I bring up that Eldritch Moon card because that card turned out to be not as powerful as some people might have expected. Paying that much mana to bounce 2 of your creatures, I mean, I suppose the mana efficiency is there, but like, how many times are you going to be willing to bounce 2 of your own guys? How many times are you going to have relevant ETBs? You know what? It triggers Revolt, though. That is
yeah, it does trigger Revolt. And at worst, it's a cantrip. I mean, the instant speed does help you against like targeted removal, which is nice.
Yep.
So, who knows?
Blank your opponent's shocks or something.
Yeah.
Alright.
I wish it said artifacts on there as well.
Yeah, that would have been a lot better, for sure. So considering this is an artifact heavy set, that would have made the card much more powerful.
Alright, next card is Leave in the Dust. It is 4 CMC, 3 generic, 1 blue, for an instant at common. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Draw a card.
Okay, so at first I was kind of disappointed with this card. I thought 4 mana for a bounce, that's really not that good. But I kept thinking about it a little bit more. And at instant speed, 4 mana bouncing any permanent, bounce a vehicle, bounce a creature, that's not bad and it reflects itself. But the important thing is to realize that in this set, there are a lot of activations. Energy, pay mana, pay energy again, for the most part. Triggers that happen. I mean, against ETBs it's worse. But I think there's a lot of potential for this card to blow out a lot of cards. Like, I think this card is a lot stronger than I first thought it was. And you draw a card.
The ability to target, it doesn't have to be your opponent's. It can be yours too, which is nice.
Yes.
It's basically unsummon, but for An additional 2 mana, you get a cantrip,
Yeah.
which I think is great and
it's worth
limited
it.
because
Yeah, this is good.
it,
I
it
mean, yeah.
it's not as good tempo wise as Unsummon is, but however, you're not at a card disadvantage either. I think this card's fine.
Yeah, I think in fact, I have come to like this card so much that I'm giving it the award for best common in blue.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, there you go.
That does not look very foreboding for blue.
Not too many great comments, but I thought more about this card, and I think there's gonna be a lot of situations when you play this card, absolutely blows out your opponent.
Yeah. But speaking of silly things in blue, the next card does just that. Mechanized Production. It's 4 CMC, 2 generic, 2 blue for an enchantment aura, mythic. Enchant artifact you control at the beginning of your upkeep. Create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game.
That's a funny card. I mean, of the win the game effects, this is actually one of the more surprisingly feasible ones, I think.
Yeah, I mean, plus copying an artifact each upkeep, is pretty strong if your opponent can't deal with it. I don't. This card is so weird. I mean, I think it might be okay in limited if you have the right
I don't think so.
artifacts to copy.
I don't think you want to pick this card.
I don't think so because like most of the artifacts you want to copy are vehicles, but copying vehicles isn't exactly effective because you still need things to crew them.
This card's not that good, I think, in limited. I wouldn't pick it.
I'm not sure.
I think this is the kind of card that wheels the table.
Yeah,
But-
I don't think it's.
But in constructed, I don't think it's gonna be like tier 1. But maybe there might be a fringe deck that utilizes this effect. I mean, we do have clues. There's a lot of really
and one of the
cheap
good
ways
things
to make a
is
lot of
that
clues.
the artifact you copy, or not copy, but you enchant to make copies out of, doesn't have to be the same one for the second clause. You don't have to have 8 of those.
You could
So
have
that
others.
part's interesting.
Like,
so
let's
you
say,
could like
yeah.
you could like copy Tamio's journal and then get a bunch of clues per turn, but it'll be the clues that win you the game.
Right.
Because all you need was 8. So that's possible.
It's an interesting card. It's definitely one of the better win more cards. Or win the game.
Yeah.
Not win more. It is win more. Alright, Metallic Rebuke, 2 generic and a blue with improvise, and counter attack as well unless its controller pays 3. So a mana leak, right?
Kinda.
Kinda.
I mean, you only have to get 1 improvise off to make it mana leak, but the downside is that you can't, like, unlike mana leak, it's unreliable that you get it off in the early turns, which means the window you have to where this card is effective is a lot shorter or a lot smaller. So I think Wizards actually did a good job designing this card because this is, this can be the power of mana leak, but it's not going to be format warping. It's not good enough on its own. Like, you have to have improvise to make this card decent.
I'm not sure
So,
how
we'll see.
effective improvise is going to be in the constructed format at that point.
Now, one thing is, if you have
Yeah.
Brawl out, this card is straight up mana leak.
It is straight up mana leak, you're right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting card.
Yeah.
For sure.
I wouldn't write it out just yet. And at common, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I do think having that much less time, like mana leak has a window you gotta operate in, having that much less time to get it to, to have the payoff before your opponent can start paying 3, it just makes it where it's not near as strong. The next one's a classic.
Classic card. Negate, 1 generic and a blue for an instant counter target non-creature spell. It's good that it's still here.
Yeah.
It'll survive rotation. Come BFC leaving. So,
And I do think the card's stronger because people are more incentivized to play artifacts, and this deals with vehicles.
yeah. Hitting Planeswalker is also a pretty big issue these days in Standard. Planeswalker is tricky to get rid of. For the most part. Yeah, you've seen it all before, right, folks? It's a classic.
All right. The next card is Quicksmith Spy. 4 CMC for 3 generic and a blue. You get a 2/3 human artificer. And it has, whenever a Quicksmith Spy enters the battlefield, target artifact you control gains tap, draw a card for as long as you control Quicksmith Spy.
I misread this card when I first read it. I thought it said every creature you control when ETBs get to draw. I was like, oh shit, this is actually not bad. Pretty good. It's a single creature. Single artifact, I should say, sorry. That you control that gains tap. Still, Not that bad, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the downside mostly is that your opponent can remove Quicksmith Spy in response to you
Yes,
drawing a
true.
card,
That can happen. Yeah.
which that's pretty harsh. I think in limited, this card is actually pretty decent.
Yeah. Probably won't get there in constructed,
I
but
don't
yeah.
think it's there in constructed though.
Yeah. Also, I just realized a lot of people speculated this would be a cycle, considering we got a red one too, Quicksmith. But I think we don't have any others in the other colors, correct?
Nope,
I think
I
it's just
believe it's
blue
just
and
red and blue.
Right.
Quicksmith Spy, however, is one of the promos. I believe it is. Is it a game day promo? Is that right, or is it one of the buy box?
Whew, I could not tell you.
Or it could be Quicksmith Rebel. I'm
I
thinking
believe
of
the
wow.
Oh wait, no, this is a rare too. Never mind. I was gonna say buy box.
Actually, I think it's Quicksmith. I think it's Quicksmith Rebel. That's the buy
Rebel,
box.
yeah, that one I'm not too hot on, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have Reverse Engineer, 3 generic blue sorcery with improvise, and you draw 3 cards. I mean, 5 mana draw 3 is passable and limited, and you can get it cheap.
Well, I think in order to get this card to be decent for its rate, you have to get it down to 4 mana, because then it's basically a blue harmonize.
Yeah, true. But in draft though, drawing multiple cards is a lot harder to come by, and so paying that extra mana is not that bad. I mean, basically, you're not gonna play this in your aggro decks. This is only for your curve topping control lists. You know.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get if you have 3 artifacts to improvise, this is basically blue draw 3, which is absurd.
Yeah, it's good. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
The problem though is that we have a little card from Kaladesh called Glimmer. Instant speed, 4 mana, a lot better.
Yeah, Salvage Scuttler. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the 4/4 for 5 is not a rate that justifies playing this card. I mean, you can abuse it with certain artifacts, but I am not too confident in this card.
Okay, so Shielded Aether Thief is a 1 generic and a blue for a flash 0/4, and whenever it blocks, you get energy, and you can pay 3 to draw a card, tapping it, obviously. I like this card. It's a good card.
Yeah.
I mean, you might think 2 mana for 0/4 is not that good, but I think the fact that you could tap it to draw a card, it's not looting, it's legit just drawing a card. That's very powerful, I think. I think it'll be a very good limited card.
3 energy is not the hardest thing to generate. And like you said, in blue, generally you want to be blocking. And this guy can block a lot. Plus gives you some payoff.
For sure. Good card.
And he has flash.
Next up.
All right. Next card is Shipwreck Moray. 4 CMC, 3 generic, 1 blue. When Shipwreck Moray enters the battlefield, you get 4 energy. You can pay an energy. Shipwreck Moray gets +2, -2 until end of turn. This card reminds me a lot of Water Courser.
Now, okay, obviously those kind of cards are very good in limited. I might have been a mistake not awarding this best common, because it might be the best common in the set, in blue, I mean. But I don't think it's honestly all that impressive, in my opinion.
See, my thing is that Water Courser, it's a very common card in a lot of sets that you can manipulate the stats and by +1, -1. The problem is Water Courser is a 3 mana 2/3, which is honestly not that bad at its base rate. Shipwreck Moray is a 4 mana 0/5, which is terrible.
That's a tough stat line to deal
with. That
is
is terrible. So you need 1 activation just for it to be a 2/3.
Yeah,
I'm not good high on this card.
I might be wrong. This card might turn out to be a mess in limited. And when I be mess, it might be really strong. But I think compared to that card, Water Courser, and the card Eldritch Moon that also had the effect, yeah, I'm not seeing it. How the mighty have fallen.
However, 4 energy, that's nice.
That's nice.
But I don't see it happening.
Definitely. All right, next up we have Skyship Plunderer. 1 generic.
No, this card's
blue,
great.
2/1 pirate. It's a pirate. That's great. That's awesome. So it flies, and whenever it deals combat damage to player for each kind of counter on target permanent or player, give that permanent or player another counter of that kind. So this is a lot similar to Thrumming Bird, which has proliferate, which is I think the exact same text, right? That this says.
Yeah, this basically has, except proliferate doesn't require you to deal damage, or did it for that card? I'm trying to remember.
Sorry, what were we talking about?
Does the card you're talking about, does it just have straight up proliferate? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a straight up says proliferate, and whenever it deals combat damage, it's a 2-mana 2/1 flyer.
Oh yeah, it's so thrumming. Yeah, so it's basically the same. Thrumming Bird has to deal damage. This has to deal damage, except this card has 1 extra power.
And that is now, however, oh, it's a 2/1. Oh, Thrumming Bird was a 1/1.
This one's a 2/1.
Right, Thrumming Bird was a 1/1. I forgot about that.
But proliferate's different in the sense that Skyship Plunderer, you can only pick 1 permanent. Whereas Thrumming Bird, it's proliferate, so any number of permanents with counters or players.
I completely misread that then, yeah.
Yeah, so in exchange for 1 power, you get a slightly worse effect, but I think that's fine because a 2-mana 2/1 flyer is perfectly playable.
All right, next up we have Taken to Custody for a blue instant. Tap a target creature, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. I've never liked these kind of effects.
No, it's card disadvantage.
Here's the thing, though. Usually these kind of effects, I mean, they cost more, but they also tack on like a card draw for the most part. So it's, at least you don't get card disadvantage. This is 1 blue. That's a very low cost. I don't think it's worth it, though.
Nope. Yeah. I think you skip this.
Yeah, we'll pass on this one.
And it's not like there's prowess cards in this set.
True.
All right, next card is Trophy Mage. It's a 3 CMC, 2 generic, 1 blue for a 2/2 human wizard. When a Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 3, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So this card's a lot like Treasure Mage and Trinket Mage, except the only thing that changes is the CMC of the artifact, which in this case is 3. I like cards like this.
It's a good card. I think it's very less so in limited, but more so in constructed formats. This can be potentially.
Oh, definitely, and especially in Commander, where swords are already popular, like the Sword of Feast and Famine, etc. You can pick out any of those and add it to your hand. So it's another tutor for those.
Exactly.
So I like it.
Yeah, it's a good card.
Yeah, good card.
War of Invention is next. Ugh, I think this one's. It's tough to evaluate this one, but this is X, a blue for an instant with improvise. Search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less, and then put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. I can't figure out if this card is really good or just kind of mediocre.
I mean, it's a powerful effect. Some people compare it to Court of Calling, which it looks a lot like. However, improvise is a little bit different than Convoke. For Convoke, your creature's color can help pay for the mana cost.
Yeah.
So it's not as heavy on your green like Court of Calling, even though Court of Calling's 3 green. It's not really. But War of Invention, you straight up need 3 blue to cast it.
That's tough.
And
that's
that
really
heavily,
hard mana cost for sure.
Yeah, that heavily pushes you into blue. I think for that fact alone, this card is deceptively less impactful. Yeah. Of course, in Commander, this card's going to be great because it's a tutor. But I think it's not going to be as powerful because you have to be so invested in blue to play this.
We'll have to see. I do like the idea of being able to tutor out that instant speed. I mean, although I guess it's not that impressive, tutoring out a Gear Hulk, considering Gear Hulks have Flash too. But, multiple copies of Gear Hulk sound pretty neat.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, tutoring is always powerful.
Definitely.
And I'm not saying this card is bad, just that it's a lot deceptive when people compare it to Court of Calling, because that blue restriction is pretty heavy.
Blue. Yep, definitely. Alright, next card. Windkin Raider. So this is 4 generic and a blue for a human artificer, 4/3 flyer with improvise. Not bad. I mean, it's nothing spectacular. 6 mana 4/3 flyer isn't great, but 5 mana 4/3 flyer, as we've talked about before, is a good rate that I definitely pay for.
Yeah, if you can get the improvise off, this card's fine.
Yep. Yeah, like I said, it all depends on how good improvise is.
Has the potential? It has the potential to be insane. Like you can play a blue 4/3 flyer.
But I think that potential is very tough to get to. And
Yeah,
that's a lot of setup for that. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's true.
This
And in
card,
blue, you generally don't have a lot of ways to make tokens. Like you can't make a lot of servos. Like for example, in white, you have Saram's expertise, which can help you there. This does not. But if you get 1 or 2 improvised triggers, I think this card's fine.
yeah, definitely. And that is the last of the blue cards. We will now be going on to Woolberg, white, blue, black. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to black next.
Our next card, we'll now be going to the black set.